In a world, our world.
The earliest film trailers that we are aware of come from a Broadway play known as The Pleasure Seekers, released in 1913. A man named, I'm going to butcher this name, Nihilus Grunland came up with the idea of advertising through splicing rehearsal footage, and this montage of media was dubbed the trailer because it would trail after production shown at low theatres. To quote from a definition on a university website written by a professor by the name of Daniel D. Stefano, film trailers were conceived in 1913 by Nihilus Granlund, the advertising manager of Marcus Loewy Theatres, when he spliced together rehearsal footage of The Pleasure Seekers, a Broadway play at the time, into a mini promotional montage that trailed after films shown at miscellaneous theatres. In the same year, Carl William Selig generated an idea to advertise films by taking reference from a successful print media convention. He noticed how people wanted to know what was happening next in print serials, so he adapted his technique to film with a 13-minute long series called The Adventures of Kathleen. This is actually the second series to have a continuation, but this is the first series to ever end episodes on a cliffhanger to excite the audience on what's next. To quote from an article written by Aditi K, the word cliffhanger might as well have entered the cinematic lexicon sometime towards the end of 1913. To quote an article by Aditi K, the word cliffhanger might as well have entered the cinematic lexicon sometime towards the end of 1913. When early motion picture maker William Selig had a brainwave, he planned a 13-part film serial that would appear simultaneously in movie theatres and newspapers, to which each 2 real episodes ending on a suspenseful note, or posed on a cliff edge, to ensure sustained viewer-reader interest. Beforehand, theatres were the ones making trailers, without the film studio's permission. Nobody minded, since it was a win-win for both. The theatres advertised and made money. The film company got an audience and made money. But in 1916, film companies began making their own trailers, and Paramount were the first company to make a whole department for this. Before this point, trailers were all silent, getting the information across with title cards, taglines, and a rundown of the cast, of course with shots from the production. But in 1927, the jazz singer released a 7-minute long trailer introducing a man stepping out directly addressing the audience on video. As films evolved in this direction, so did trailers. The NSS was a monopoly of its time, starting with a group of businessmen, taking movie stills and spliced titles to sell to movie theatres and distribute their promotion. By the 1940s, they had contracts with all the major Hollywood companies and branched out into print-based media. They dominated the market, introducing screen wipes and fly-in text. To summarize from an infographic made by Tom Y, the National Screen Service, NSS, was started in 1919 and started creating trailers for films without permission. However, the studios realized they were promoting their films and so started buying into the company, and by 1940, the NSS monopolized the making of trailers. There were 2 really big faces in the 1960s. One of them was Alfred Hitchcock, who was a star director responsible for some of the most shocking films of its time, like Scream. He was very protective over his works. To quote from the same infographic, he reinvented trailers with the film Psycho. He gave a tour of the set as if he was in the world of the film. This inspired people to come up with new ways of making trailers. Another one was Stanley Kubrick, who was responsible for movies such as Dr. Strangelove, A Space Odyssey and The Shining, according to Biography.com. He experimented with new techniques for trailers such as strobe black and white lighting and fast cutting between words and images. In the 1970s, film studios began shifting away from the standardized style of NSS trailers, took back control of their promotion and emphasized more on sound and censorship. This was the golden era of Hollywood, with groundbreaking movies such as Jaws releasing and colored film solidifying. Following on, Don LaFontaine became the voice of God when he would perform the VO voiceover of over 50,000 films.
When the storm hit, both our cars were totally underwater.
In a world where both of our cars were totally underwater,
We thought it would take forever to get some help.
But a new wind was about to blow.
This was a time when film trailers would almost always have a voiceover, and his voice was the go-to that you would be familiar with hearing.
In a world, in a time, there was a man.
In modern day, film trailers have developed drastically and are an art form of their own. Everyone is excited about the release of a new trailer, and the trailer can make or break the expectation or even reputation of a movie before it's even released. Trailers no longer rely on voiceover to explain the story as audiences became more intellectual, and there is a lot of careful consideration and effort that goes into producing trailers. To use a modern day example, Cloverfield is a found footage styled horror film released in 2008. The found footage subgenre of film was first established by the Blair Witch Project in 1999. Cloverfield takes a different approach to the stylized approach to horror films, as the trailer itself is very cinematic. It begins in medias res, which means starting right in the action, of someone filming a house party in New York, before the trailer turns to complete chaos of flashes, explosions, quick cuts, and more, with someone documenting the experience. There was no title card at the end of the trailer either, and the whole sequence was made to be disorienting for the audience, making them want to know what is happening, as nothing is particularly clear. The name itself is very interesting, as according to an article by Kelvin P. Sullivan, within the world of the first film, Cloverfield is the designation given by the US government to the Manhattan monster attack captured by the character HUD. This was originally chosen as the title of the movie, and though other temporary ones were suggested, it ultimately became the final name because of the fan familiarity with it. In other words, the film didn't even have a name for some time. Now fast forward on to 2020, COVID-19 happened and movie trailers are all being delayed.